Yes, so last time we discussed about some of the anthropic forces that are important in soft matter. So what we have dealt with was first of all the polymer elasticity, and the second stuff that we discussed was mainly the osmotic forces. And today I want to come back something we discussed some lectures ago, which were the electrostatic forces, because up to now we have mainly dealt with the calculation of the density profiles of ions close to a charged surface. But what is important in many situations is what is the force between two plates that are approach of each other. So what I want to calculate is the force between two charged surfaces. I promise that already, and since I was a little bit slow, I wasn't able to do that last time. So, well, and the first part is, well, the calculation of the force. So the situation is the one we have already discussed quite a lot. So it's a charged surface. Let's say with a charge density which is positive. And we put it in contact with a symmetric surface with the same density of charge. So if we have these, then we will have a kind of condensation of ions close to the surface that we already discussed. And we have this screening of the interface, which is mainly governed by the Debye length. So we have already discussed that quite a bit. So what we know is that if we want to calculate the force with respect to the distance between the two plates, what we expect to have is that the force will be small if the distance is large compared to the Debye length, the force will be close to 0. And if the distance is smaller or of the same order of magnitude that the Debye length, we will see a force between the surface. And this is exactly this force that we want to calculate here. So, well, what is important here is to understand that since we have kind of a concentration of ions here, the rho plus and rho minus between the two surfaces, which will depend on the distance z. Oops. Which will depend on the distance from the wall. What we have is that we will have a pressure that I call P, which will depend on the distance between the two surfaces. And this pressure can be dependent on the position in between the plate. And this pressure is an electrostatic pressure. That's, well, people call also a disjoining pressure. And the disjoining pressure, I'm pretty sure that David Quéré told you about disjoining pressure, but here the pressure that we have will be a disjoining pressure. That is the pressure which is not the classical hydrostatic pressures that we have in liquid. It is an extra pressure which is due to confinement. Okay, and that's this pressure that we want to calculate in between these two surfaces. So if we want to calculate these two this pressure, the easiest way, there are several ways of calculating here. I thought about what will be the easiest way for you, and to be honest, also for me. And I think that the easiest way is to use the thermodynamical approach. So I will start from the Gibbs-Duhem theorem. And I will simply say that, well, if there is this pressure, I will have to write that the Gibbs-Duhem theory, which is minus V dP plus N plus d mu plus n minus d mu minus is equal to 0, where n plus is the number of positive charge, n minus the number of negative charge, and mu is the chemical potential. Well, mu is the electrochemical potential. So I don't want to stay with this shape. I will divide by the volume in order to have something which is easiest. So now I have rho plus d mu plus rho minus d mu minus is equal to 0. And this is the important relation. And here again, I tell it, the mu is the electrochemical potential. So if I write that, so the electrochemical potential is something which is of the shape, well, it is a reference potential, as you know, and you add, so it's something like kT, the logarithm of the density. So here you have the classical chemical potential for an ideal gas, and you add at the end the electric term, and this is the term which is important in this situation. So if you do that, you can easily say that the differential of the chemical potential is K. I want to write that in mole, but here you have that it's a KT. Where did the minus go? Thanks, Lila. I just forget it. Forgot it. I have to look at the chat. You have the chemical potential. It's KT, the derivative of rho divided by rho. Plus or minus E dV. So if we come back to the Gibbs-Duhem equation, we have no minus dP, and we just have to replace these, and you see that we have rho plus times rho plus, so we have one term which is simply kT d rho plus d rho minus, and the other term which is plus E, and which is rho plus minus rho minus dV is equal to 0. Okay, and these you can eliminate it using the Poisson equation, because this comes from the Poisson equation. And so this term is simply minus epsilon d2 square over dz square, like that. Okay, but these, if you multiply, I try to use colors, since it is multiplied by dV, if I just recopy these, it is also with a minus sign, minus epsilon, the derivative of dV over dz square. So now we have only we can integrate this equation, and if we put everything together, we will have minus P, so we can say that P is equal to KT times rho plus rho minus, and there is a constant which is minus 2 rho 0, which is average density when the two surfaces far from the surfaces, minus epsilon over 2 dv over dz square. Okay, so here, this is only math. But it shows that the pressure in between the two, why are the V equal? Here in Basil, your question is related to this equation. Well, it is just that you assume that in between the two surfaces you have an electrical potential, and the electrical potential in these equations will depend on the local value of the potential. Here's the only point is that up to now I haven't written what is V, and of course V is depending on Z, and this shows that the pressure that you have here is, you can calculate the pressure everywhere. Does that answer to your question, Basil? You can write it in the chat or not. There are some people with the microphone open. I don't care if you have something to say, but it's just because it makes some noise for the others. So you can calculate the pressure everywhere. Sorry, I come back to my calculation.
Please, I have a question.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yes, in the first line of the Gibbs-Duhem theorem,
Yeah.
V appears to be a pressure. That's why I'm asking the question. When you write V dp,
yes,
V looks like a volume, but
yes.
when you write the Poisson equation,
Sorry. I apologize. Yeah, sorry, I apologize for that. Here you are right. Here it was a volume. I didn't care that I didn't make that attention of that, and here that the electrical potential. Sorry.
Okay.
So I should write. I don't know what I could. Let's do that.
Okay, thank you.
So you can calculate the pressure everywhere, and there is a situation where there is a point where it should be easy to calculate. It is in the middle of the two surfaces. So because in the middle of the two surfaces, due to the symmetry of the problem, we assume that dV is equal to dz in the middle. So from that, we can say that, well, the pressure in the center, so let's call that in the center, will be kT divided by I have to be careful with the writing. It should be rho plus, well, no. I will write it like that. P in the middle will be rho plus in the middle plus rho minus in the middle minus 2 rho 0. And well, now what is difficult is that we have to make some assumption about what is the value of rho plus and rho minus, and we can use what we have done before, and we can say that the pressure will be kT rho naught exponential of minus e v divided by kT plus exponential plus ev divided by kT minus 2. Oops. So here we just assume that we have an exponential decrease of the density of charge close to the surface. Well, if we assume, and here we will make a strong assumption for today, we assume that EV over KT is really small compared to 1, and we have already discussed that it's not completely true. But if we do something like that, we can make a development of this expression, and we can go up to the end. It will be rho 0 e square v square. We have to go to the second term, k square t square times v square of d over 2. Okay. And we shall have something like that for the pressure between the two surfaces. And of course, these we can use what we had calculate in the limit of the Debye-Huckel limit. Since we have already done this assumption once, we can do it twice. And if we do that, can I go to the next slide? Maybe not. I'll let you write.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Could you please say again on what does this Debye-Huckel refer to? Just to the d over 2? Or on the whole expression?
About the fact that I can assume that EV over KT is smaller than 1.
Okay, thank you. So just on the approximation?
Exactly. When I make the development here.
Okay, thank you.
And we have shown, I think it's 2 lectures ago, that it is not completely exact, even though at the end, well, we have to renormalize the charge at the surface when we cannot make this Debye-Huckel approximation. So if I go to the next step of the calculation, no, paysage, okay. What I have is that I know how V is depending on Z, so I can calculate V over D, and we can go up to the end and see that the pressure will be we'll have the expression rho E square Vs square divided by KT square. And here you have this expression here you recover the fact that V of S was of the shape Vs exponential of minus kappa d V of Z, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It seems that this is not the dimension of a pressure. Maybe there is no square on the KT at the denominator.
Yes, you're right. There is no square on the KT. And what here also. Yeah, because I had 1 KT here and 2 KT here. That's it works. Thanks. So here you see that we have a pressure which decreases exponentially with the distance between the two plates, and also we have a pressure which is positive, which is a sign that, well, two surfaces of the same size will repulse. Okay, so the idea is now that, well, if I come back to the physics of the problem, if I have two surfaces separated by a distance d, I will have a force in between the surface, or pressure in between the surface, because the force is proportional to the area of the surface, which looks like P0 exponential of minus kappa d. So this force, as expected, tends to 0 when d is larger than the bi-length, the screening the bi-length. So this clearly makes sense. Also, it tells us that, well, we should be able to use P over D as a measure of the surface potential or the surface charge, but this will be valid only in the case where we are in a Debye-Hückel approximation. And in the case where sigma is large, or Vs is large, which is equivalent, we will still recover the fact that P over D will be something like exponential of minus kappa d, exactly like as expected, but due to the kind of renormalization of the charge that we have to apply close to the surface, this will give kind of a false surface charge, or an effective surface charge, because we have seen before that far to the surface we recover an exponential decay, but with a different prefactor, which is not simply Vs. Well, if we have a pressure like that, we can say that, so here that's a pressure. If we have a pressure like that, we can say that we have also a surface free energy that we can call P of E, as we had done before in the first lecture. And the relation between P and E and P of D is simply that dP over dd is minus the pressure. That's kind of an important relationship, which tells us that, well, since the pressure, the electrostatic disjoining pressure is exponential, we will have at the end P of D for the electrostatic term, which is of the shape, let's call that U naught, well, let's call that P0, exponential of minus kappa D. Well, here we can make a remark, or not, maybe we have to wait a little bit before making this remark, and we have to go to the second point, that is the DLVO theory. So the DLVO theory, you discussed that with David. The name are for Deryagin, oops, Landau, Verwey, and Overbeck. The idea is simply that, well, when you have two surfaces, usually you will have to say that the surface free energy will be the sum of an electrostatic term plus a van der Waals term. So the electrostatic term, we just wrote it right now. It is P naught exponential of minus kappa dd. And do you remember the shape of the second term here?
Something over d square, the Hamaker constant over 12 pi d square, or
Yes,
something like that.
Exactly. The Hamaker constant over 12 pi d square and with a minus sign. Because two surfaces were attractive when when it was a symmetrical case. Okay with that? So this is the DLVO surface free energy. Well, I think that I should make a remark here because I didn't define that before. I could do exactly the same I could use exactly the same ID that I have done before. Here, what I have done in the electrostatic case is that I have calculated the force, and from the force, or I have calculated the pressure, and from the pressure, I went to the surface free energy. In the case of van der Waals forces, I have calculated the surface free energy, and I could also calculate disjoining pressure, which is P over D for van der Waals forces. And this disjoining pressure will be, using this equation, minus A divided by 6 pi d square d to the power 3. Okay, and this, I mean, this is something I just discovered yesterday, that I didn't wrote this formula, which can be found in many places. Okay, you can really assume that there is a force, and this force is really important, and it is an extra pressure which is due to the confinement. So, which is the fact that if I have a liquid film here, well, if D is large, the pressure will be the pressure of the liquid, so kind of the hydrostatic pressure. And if I go to low D, well, which means D of the order of hundreds of nanometers or lower, I will see the van der Waals forces, and the pressure will have to be corrected by the van der Waals pressure. So the pressure will be the pressure of the liquid plus the van der Waals term. And of course, if there is electrostatic terms, I will correct all the pressure by the different disjoining pressure. So I should write it a little bit more clearly. So this will be the pressure without confinement, and this is the real pressure in the confined liquid. Okay, it is what the disjoining pressure terms means. It is an extra pressure which is due to the confinement. Well, so based on that, we can calculate the shape of the total the total pressure. So the free energy, I will discuss in free energy. So P of D is the sum of two terms. One terms, which is the exponential terms that we discussed, so the electrostatic term, which is P0 exponential of minus kappa D, and another one, which is more like that, which is minus A divided by 12P D square, where here I have shown the case of a positive A. So here you see that, well, we can have different situations. So the resulting P over D curves could have different shape depending on what dominates between these two curves. And if you use Python or anything like that, you will have some situation where, well, sorry for that. It's try to do something like that. So here you will have well, I will give you a better curve. But here I have shown something that will occur in case of small Hamaker constant. So A kappa D square divided by 12P P naught smaller than 1, or you can have situation where, in the other case, where you will have no maximum, no extremum, and the curve will be like that if a kappa d square divided by 12 pi p naught is larger than what? So you see that depending on the Baille length, you can have a maximum or not in the free energy. So that's something which is really important in electrostatics, in colloidal science, which is changing kappa d or lambda d can allow to control the interaction potential. So here, this situation, is that a situation with a large cell concentration or low cell concentration? And here. So what situation correspond to the large cell concentration? What situation correspond to the low cell concentration? Ludovic, I will just change for the next slide. You make a capture d'écran, pardon, a screen capture, if you want.
Okay, thank you. It's good, thank you.
You're welcome. So what situation correspond to the low cell concentration? You are lost? So I think it's lecture 2 or lecture 3. No. I'm looking for the definition of here. If I go to the if I go to the Debye length, if I increase the concentration of salt, I decrease the Debye length here. Okay, what I see is that what we had is that if rho 0, the concentration of salt increases, the Debye length decreases, so kappa d increases. So this is small salt concentration, and this is high salt concentration. And you see that at small cell concentration, so it tells us that when we have a combination of van der Waals forces which are attractive and electrostatic forces which are repulsive, at small cell concentration we'll have these energy barrier. So we'll have an electrostatic stabilization of the van der Waals attraction, or electrostatic, let's say, compensation. And here, what we will have done is we have screened the electrostatic interaction. And since we have screened the electrostatic interactions, well, the particles will attract together, and we will have an attraction of the system. Okay with that? So, well, what are the consequences of these? They are kind of a lot. Thanks, Hannibal. Andirban. Do you have any idea of these? No?
I was wondering if it was one of the reasons that salt could be bad for your health. Like,
No.
no?
The problem of salt regarding the health is more kind of osmotic pressure between the arteria and the tissues of your body that you will have to compensate by hydrostatic pressure, and which makes your heart working more. So the problem of salt, I mean, the problem of salt regarding the health is more related to this problem of arterial pressure. Of course, I mean, to be completely honest, we can analyze all what we have said before about the Bae length, the Bae screening, etc. We could have seen that in terms of osmotic pressure of the ions, but it's kind of an indirect view of that. Do you understand? I mean, to make it clearer, if I come back to what we have just done here. No, it is, yes. When we were here, something that I have not said, but when we had this equation here, you see that we could have, I should have said that, you see here that the electrostatic pressure is kind of an osmotic pressure of the ions, because you see KT times the density of ions.
Okay, so it kind of it's the same thing that we've seen before, but in another presentation.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but it's in a more smarter way, because here the point is that what is not completely clear is that you see that when I go to this term, you see that in the in the pressure you have one term which is obviously osmotic, but this term that I can neglect in the middle, I mean, it's not completely osmotic, so it's I mean, it's a clean demonstration of what is the pressure. Of course, I could have directly wrote that without saying anything. You will have accept, but it would have been as clean as it should be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, one of the consequences, I think that to come back to David's Kere lectures, you had discussed with David the stability of soap film. And the reason why some films can stay forever is that if we go to surfactants, like the most common one is SDS, sodium dodecyl sulfate, the charge are negative. I'm sorry. And when I measure the thickness of a soap film with respect to time, it will decrease, and this is the David Keres part. And at the end, it will never completely goes to zero, and it will not goes to zero because you have this repulsive barrier, which is due to DLVO, and what is called the Newton's black film. And I'm sure that David told you this term. Did he?
Yeah, and he showed us some picture about that, and that was really impressive.
So, and these Newton black films, I mean, they can stay forever as long as there are no vibrations, nothing, and that. I mean, you have people who have kept some Newton's black films during days or during months. So really, this is something which is ultra stable. So there is this link. There is some other common feature of these DLVO forces, which has which is the question of colloidal stability. Well, you have a lot of situations where you have some small particles in a liquid. So you have water here, and you have what is called colloids, which are Brownian particles. And of course, these Brownian particles, if they tend to agglomerate, their size will increase, and if the size is too big, then they will flocculate. So for these particles to be stable in suspension, you have to keep them Brownian, so you have to keep them small. So if you want to avoid the flocculation. Well, if these particles are charged, which is often the case because silica is charged, as an example. So if it's dust made of silica, then you will have this DLVO repulsion. So you will have this electrostatic stabilization. And that's something which is often used. I mean, by water we want to clean. I mean, by people like Suez or these big companies who want to clean the water. So if they want to avoid this particle to stay in the water to filtrate them, you can add some salt. And if you add some salts, then you will kill the electrostatic repulsion. You will have the aggregation, and you have the sedimentation. And so, two things about that. First of all, this kind of electrostatic stabilization, it is often used. I'm sure that during some trainings or some exams, you have worked with fluorescence particles to label, like in biology or in biophysics or in microfluidics, use all these kinds of polystyrene spheres, and they are really stabilized by this DLVO stabilization. There are some other ways of stabilization, but the DLVO one it is often used. So this is really used in stabilization. And the flocculation is also used, so in industry. And I should have done that before. When you a very funny application of that is if you look at what happens. Well, let's say that it is France. So okay. So here is you have the Brittany. Well, so what I want to say is that here you have the Seine or any river which goes to the sea, and usually when you look at pictures seen from above, when you are in this area, you see that you have a lot of sediments, and that's the reason why yes, you have a lot of sediments when a river goes to the sea. And the reason why you have a lot of sediments is exactly the one that we have just seen here, is the fact that here you have kappa d, which is small, or here we have a lambda d, which is high. And when we go up to the sea, we have a lambda d, which becomes small, and then you have all this sedimentation in this area. Okay, due to the fact that you screen the electrostatic repulsion, and then you have this strong attraction due to van der Waals forces. So really, that's DLVO. It is something which is really important, and the way you can measure DLVO is also something that is interesting. And well, that's my question for you. How will you, I mean, you all want to become physicists, so we have made this theoretical calculation. So how will you propose to measure this DLVO force? Well, I can show you different techniques. So, well, you can measure the DLVO force by using between liquids. So the situation here is we have a liquid, we have air, and we want to measure the force with respect to the distance. So kind of controlled black film experiment. So there is this nice paper by Radke in 2003. And the idea is, well, basically, I don't know if you see here, but the idea is that here you have kind of a porous material that is connected to water through this capillary tube. So here you have water here in all this porous material, and what you do is you form here a liquid film, and you put that you put everything in a box. So as you see here, which allows you to control the pressure. So what you do indeed is you control by connecting these to a reservoir and these by controlling the air pressure. You are really able to measure the force between the force applied on this liquid film. Okay, and by doing that, it's possible to measure the pressure with respect to the distance, and you see that, well, if you are able to measure the thickness of the liquid films with respect to the pressure, you are able to see that, well, depending on the charge density, you will have or not the DLVO theory, which is valid. So basically, I mean, you can read this paper, of course, but that's a common way of measuring the disjoining pressure in between the liquid. And the idea, I mean, I don't want to enter in the details of the paper, but you see that for this situation here, the DLVO theory was working, but there were some situations like here where DLVO theory was not working. And the situation of when DLVO was working in the situation where salt was added, and DLVO was not working with no salt. But one of the reasons for that is that, well, SDS is already a salt, so it's quite difficult to know exactly the concentration of salt so it is really difficult to know rho zero with low salt concentration. Because you are really sensitive to a lot of impurities. As an example, we said in some lectures before that lambda D was around 1 micrometer for pure water. But when people do the experiments, it's really hard to measure these because they often see the dissolution of the glass. I mean, the ions contained in the glass, they measure it. Oops. Okay, so this is the technique that allows to measure the DLVO force or the disjoining force in liquid films, or you can do that, using the surface force apparatus that we already, and I think I should have written the reference. I will write it. That's a paper by Israelashvili. And well, here you clearly see, I mean, I didn't make the zoom on that, but here you clearly see the exponential minus gamma d decrease, which is the signature of the electrostatic force between two surfaces. So that's really a clean way. So again, the surface force apparatus is a clean way of measuring the forces. And you see, I mean, you see again that the range of distance we are dealing with, that's nanometric, okay? Here you clearly measure the distance in the range between 100 nanometer to 10 nanometer, whereas in the system with curves, the distance were even smaller. We were dealing with distances between 5 to 10 nanometers. Okay. So, well, it's more or less what I wanted to discuss with you here about the electrostatic force, which are really important in many situations. Well, I want to deal with another kind of forces which are due to KT, which are the depletion interactions. So it will be the section 4, I think. Yeah. And well, I think that this I will probably skip a little bit the calculation, but the idea, yeah, I think that I will only give the result and maybe send you my notes about this part because, well, it's a little bit less interesting to my point of view. The idea is that let's imagine that you have a big particle here and a small particle here. Well, the fact that you have this big particle makes that you have an excluded volume. And the excluded volume is the fact that, well, you can only approach the particle. So if you say that this diameter between the two particles is d, if we call sigma this small diameter, here we have an excluded volume which is 4 pi, 4/3 pi d plus sigma over 2 to the power 3. So what is interesting is that, well, what happens if I approach two big particles? So what is the excluded volume of two big particles which are at a distance r which is smaller than d plus sigma? Here we have r larger than d plus sigma. So what situation gives the big excluded volume for the small particles? The second one. Okay, so here I agree. We have a reduction. of the excluded volume. So this will create a force. Between the two particles. So this force, it will be an attractive one or a repulsive one?
Attractive?
Yes. And there is an attractive force between the two surfaces because this situation, the situation where the two particles are close, it gives more available space for the small particles. Which give an increase of entropy, and this is favorable. So we have this attraction. Another way of seeing that is to say, well, since here in between the two, I will write that in black. Since in between the particles, the concentration of small particle is smaller, because they cannot enter it. The concentration, let's say, rho of small particle is smaller. You will have an osmosis force that push the big particle on each other. So there are two different ways of presenting the same stuff. So alternative explanation. So again, so a way of calculating that is that we will be able to say that there will be when we have these two particles. If we look at the excluded volume here, we will say that here there is an area S, and the force will be something like P S times rho KT, where rho is the density of small particle. Okay. And here you can calculate everything based on the volume. I will give you a clean calculation of that. Okay, so here you see that we have this other kind of force which is due to KT that will appear in a lot of situation, or in a lot of practical situation. And well, again, since I'm an experimentalist, my question is, well, do you know some application of this depletion interaction? No. Well, again, for clean waters, it's a common way of having clean water is to have. We said already that well, we have the, qu'est-ce que c'est ça? We have these particles that are in suspension, and you want to make flocculate in order to have clean water. And the common way of doing that is adding some small particles, which indeed will not be really particles, but it will be some polymers. And that's a really common way of getting clean water to add these polymers to help the flocculation. The polymers will not be able, will have a reduction of their available volume. Well, when they are in solution, they will push the particle together and they will help the flocculation. So that's really a huge use of polymers for the use for to get clean water. Yeah. Okay. So it's more or less what I wanted to say about the forces between the surfaces. There are, of course, I mean, KT is everywhere. KT gives a huge number of forces, but due to the reason of time, I cannot go to all over this kind of. It may. Yes, exactly, Julien. You had it. I cannot go over all the cases. And what I propose you is to make a 5 minutes break in order to allow your eyes to calm down a little bit. I know that it's a kind of boring. I come back in 5 minutes. It allows also to go to the restrooms and kind like that, or to take another cup of coffee. I come back in 5 minutes and we will discuss new lectures, and we will discuss the situation of what is the effect of KT, not about the fluctuations of interface, but about the shape of the interfaces. Okay, let's have a small break. Okay, I think that we shall start again. Not to be too long, and today we will begin something that will go about one the big paragraph. Well, yes, it's easier to clean the water from polymer, and also the fact is that what is interesting here is that the quantity of polymers that, I mean, the polymers that are used for that is are very long polyelectrolytes. I mean, you probably don't know what is a polyelectrolyte, or not all of you. It is charged polymer, so I mean, oh yes, you know, because you have seen the Manning condensation during the tutorials. It is very long charge polymers, which are, since you have some electrostatic repulsions between the monomers, they are really long, and so you will only put a very tiny amount of these polymers in the water and in dilute situations. So you will flocculate a lot of these hard particles with a very small quantity of polymers, which make it really easy to use. Sorry for that. Well, yes. So let's go to the lecture 5 or the chapter 5. which is about a continuous picture of the liquid vapor interface. And I think that I should apologize because I think that you have already seen part of these during the tutorials, and it would have been better if you have seen the lecture before the tutorial. But well, I will try to come back kind of slowly about these, because I think that this approach, I mean, it is used here to describe the liquid vapor interface, but it's kind of a general approach. And the idea is, well, if we have Z and we have a liquid vapor interface, the question is, up to now, we have always said that the thickness psi xi of the interface is equal to 0. It is what we have said, and well, there are some situations for which this should be equal to 0. First of all, of course, nothing is completely discontinuous in physics, so that's kind of but also, well, when we go to temperature which are close to the critical one, there should be some divergence of the correlation length, which makes that this thickness of the interface shouldn't be equal to 0. So the fluctuations of density tends to infinity. So we want to describe that, and the context of that will be mainly van der Waals fluids, even though this is much more general than that. Okay, so the approach that we will have is the one that you have already seen as I said in tutorial, which is the density functional theory of an interface. Should be in red. And well, the fourth point is kind of a reminder of thermodynamics. Well, this part is kind of a very something that you know more or less, is that, but I just want to say it again to make it clear. The idea is that we want an equation of state for a system, and let's say that if we have an ideal gas, then you know that the partition function Z will be something like 1 factorial n divided by V divided by the thermal length of the Broglie to the power 3 to the power n, where the thermal length is 2 pi h bar square divided by mkt. And based on that, well, it's based on that, you have that the free energy for the ideal gas is minus kT, the logarithm of Z, and is kTV times yes, rho divided, wait, I will, yeah, rho divided by the logarithm of rho lambda t square minus rho. And what you want to deal with is the free energy per volume. Okay. And you divided this by the volume, and you have simply kT rho log rho lambda t square minus rho. Well, here I have, of course, you can. So the classical way is not to normalize by the Boyle thermal length, and then you don't have the entropy which tends to 0 at T is equal to 0. This is a better way to do that, but I'm sure you have done both in your history. Okay, so it's something like rho log rho minus rho plus a constant. Okay. Well, if you want a fast transition between these in this system, you need to add attractive force, and the kind of simple system that we can imagine is the van der Waals fluid. And for the van der Waals fluid, we can define a free energy, which will be of the same shape. It will be kT divided by rho ln of rho lambda t square divided by 1 minus b rho minus rho minus and here you recognize two terms. The first one here is the volume, the excluded volume terms. And what is this term? This term is the attractive term. As you can see, due to the minus sign here. And since it is proportional to the rho square, it is clearly the sign of a pairwise interaction. So the square here, I insist a little bit on that. The square here is the direct sign of the pairwise interaction. Well, this you have seen that in your StatPhys classes, so I don't want to spend much more time on that, but I mean, this is what you already know. And the idea is that from that, you can plot this function, so f as a function of rho, and this function will have this shape for a temperature which is smaller than the critical temperature. And what you have done up to now is that, well, based on that, you can see that you can make a double tangent construction which tells you that when you have this shape of free energy, which goes up, which have this kind of two local minima, you will be able, due to the double tangent construction, to define a phase transition. And this phase transition, it makes appears two phases, one with a large density, which is the liquid, and one with a low density, which is a vapor. And all these densities, they are unstable. Okay, I think that you all have seen that before. What is interesting is that you shall remember more or less what is this slope here. And do you know what it is? No, it's not the pressure here, Adrien. With this representation, it's not the pressure. Yeah, it's the chemical potential, because it's d F divided by V divided by D N divided by V. So it's dF divided by dN, and it's mu. Okay. So here, this defines the fact that you have equality of the chemical potential in the liquid phase and in the vapor phase. We call mu in this part. And well, I think that a very interesting feature of the statistical physics of the interface is, can we use this kind of idea about that, well, the density is not a constant and we can have profile of density in order to know the density of a liquid at an interface. So it's what we want to do right now. And I will try to calculate the density profile. Close to interface. So basically what we want to do is, well, to say that here we have Z, we have somewhere here a plane. We'll see that what it is, but there is somewhere a plane that is a plane of the interface, and around this plane the density is more or less like that. So far from the surface here, the density is small. It should be the density of the vapor. And here, far from the surface, the density is large, and it's the density of the liquid. And well, here there is a zone which is the thickness of the interface. That we neglected up to now. Well, if we do that, we can say that the free energy of the system will be the sum of the free energy up to the Gibbs plane and above the Gibbs plane. Okay, and well, we'll see later that it's kind of an issue of finding what is this plane, but let's assume that we can define the plane here in between the interface. Well, what is interesting is to compare this situation to the situation where we have assumed that the profiles are abrupt. Okay, and we can calculate the excess free energy compared to this situation. So if we compare these excess free energy divided by A, it will be minus from minus to infinity to the Gibbs plane of F minus FL dc plus sum of between ZG and plus infinity de F minus FV dz. Okay, here we are in the pure liquid phase, and here we are in the pure vapor phase. And well, I will come back to these. Sorry for that. And just to say, well, just to say that you see that I can write the equation of this function. So in order not to go back and forth, I just write you the equations that we can easily derivate from the from these. We can say that the equation of the double tangent line is simply FL plus mu factor of rho minus rho L, or FV plus mu facteur de rho minus rho V. And these, I can inject these here and the first part here. So I can say that the excess free energy with respect to A is simply sum of minus infinity to ZG. So F minus FL is F minus F double tangent plus mu rho L minus rho dz plus sum from ZG to infinity of F minus F dt plus mu rho v minus rho dz. Well, here I have written, I can so put f minus f dt over the whole interface. Plus, here you see that you have mu times minus infinity plus zg rho L minus rho dc plus zg to infinity rho v minus rho dz. So what is that? This is rho L minus rho. This is this area, so it is plus the red area here on the curve, and here it is minus the blue area. So how can we interpret this quantity? Do you have an idea of what that represents? Yes, it's kind of difficult, so I will write it. It's kind of an excess quantity of particles. It is, well, divided by A, the area of the surface. It is the number of particles which are at the surface compared to the situation at which we will have defined the profiles as a step profile. Well, of course, a very easy way of not taking into account is to say, well, we can choose this equal to 0 by fixing the position of the Gibbs plane. So here at the beginning, the Gibbs plane was an arbitrary plane. And here I say, well, a very common way of putting this will be to say that in average, there is no particle at the interface, which means that we will say that this quantity is equal to 0. So if we do that, then the excess free energy is equal to the sum from minus infinity to plus infinity of f minus f double tangent gz, and these we can call w, and w it's not easy to say what is w with respect to z, but I know what is w with respect to rho. If I come to what I had here, it will be a curve which looks more like that. Sorry. Okay, my drawings are very, very bad. And by construction, this function, it is equal to 0 for the two limiting value, which is rho v and rho l, which are here. So now I have to come back to the interpretation of what is this quantity here. Sorry. So what is this? If I come back to this definition. I mean, the excess free energy is that I have integrated the free energy of the system, the density of free energy of the system, up to the plane of the plane of the interface. And I have to subtract what I would have is that if I have taken a whole system with a density which is the density of the liquid, and the whole system with the half upper system which is the density of the vapor. So what is that? No. I mean, it's easier to see that here. This is the surface tension. Because here you have take the free energy of the system. You have taken into account all the free energy of the bulk gas phase, all the free energy of the gas phase place, and you have what appears extra as an extra term in the free energy of your system. So this is the surface free energy of your system. Okay with that? So if you accept that, you see immediately that gamma is now a functional of the profile of density at the interface. And of course, you can write it like that. And if you do that, what you will have to do is immediately to say that the profile of density of your system is the one that minimizes the functional. The real rho of Z is the one. And then, because I have only 4 minutes left, I will say that the profile of density that minimizes gamma here is trivial. It is this one. Sorry. Rho. If I take a profile of density, which is this one, I will have gamma is equal to 0. And I have two problems. First of all, a problem which is that I have no surface tension. And the second problem is that we wanted to get a discontinuous profile, and well, we assumed since the beginning that we will have a discontinuous profile, and we find we assume since the beginning that we will have a continuous profile, and we find a discontinuous profile. Well, so if we work in the local density approximation, we find that gamma is equal to 0. So what is the solution that we have to take into account? We have to add an extra term to the free energy. And we will say that the free energy that we have to minimize is something which is a little bit different, is that, well, we recover the term W of rho that is the local terms that we just had before. I mean, and we explain where it comes from. And we will have a non-local terms, which is, and the easiest way of taking into account a non-local term is to have something which is proportional to the change of density. So at each point, we take into account the density at a point a little bit close to this one. So we'll have a term which is proportional to the gradient of density to the square. And of course, I mean, if we make a development, there should be a term proportional to the change of density, but you don't want to be sensitive to the sign of d rho over dz. So the first term in the development is equal to 0. Okay, so that's the easiest way of taking into account the non-local, the gradient of density. Okay, so with that, I should finish here, but I mean, this explains why you had work with this kind of free energy in the tutorial with Alessandro and Raphael. And it is just due to the fact that we cannot have a density profile which does not contain a term like that if we want to get a surface tension. Okay. So what we will do during the next lecture is mainly we will solve these for the liquid vapor interface, which will allow us to calculate the density profile, in particular close to the critical point, and we will see what is the consequence of this kind of approach in terms of the wetting transition. So we'll do a little bit the same thing that you have done in tutorial, but in a slightly different way next week. Okay.